Hello, and welcome to Pod 4 Journal Club. Today, we're going to dive into a paper that tackles a really huge question for pretty much any business looking to use AI. And that question is, how do you give an AI the freedom to be creative and solve problems without it just running wild and causing chaos? We're going to look at a new kind of AI playbook that tries to do exactly that. And yeah, this really is the core dilemma, isn't it? On one hand, you want your AI to be smart, autonomous, and find new ways of doing things. But on the other hand, you absolutely need guardrails to prevent things from going off the rails. It's this delicate balance between empowerment and control. And honestly, it's one of the biggest challenges in the entire field right now. The researchers in this paper give this challenge a great name. They call it the AI's sandbox problem. So the big question they're trying to answer is, how do you build a safe, well-defined play area for a powerful AI to experiment and get its work done? Okay, let's make this real. Imagine a smart AI assistant that's in charge of a company's entire supply chain. You absolutely want it to be creative. You want it to find faster, cheaper shipping routes and automatically adapt when there's a delay. That's the freedom part. But, and this is a big but, it absolutely cannot break any legal regulations or skip mandatory quality checks. Those are the hard and fast rules it has to follow no matter what. So to solve this, the researchers introduced this really central concept called the process frame. The easiest way to think about this is as the official rulebook for that digital sandbox we just talked about. But it's not just a simple list of do's and don'ts. It's way more sophisticated. It's a dynamic set of boundaries that defines every single possible legal move the AI is allowed to make. Right, so how do you actually build one of these process frames? Well, the authors propose what they call a hybrid approach, which basically means mixing two totally different kinds of rules together. Let's break down what that actually means. So on one side, you've got what are called procedural models. Think of these as a super strict step-by-step recipe. You have to do A, then you have to do B, then you have to do C. In that exact order, no exceptions. But on the other side, you have declarative models. These are much more like flexible principles or guidelines. A declarative rule might just say something like, hey, every time you do action B, you have to make sure you also do action K at some point down the line. It doesn't care what happens in between, just as long as that general principle is followed. Now, here's where they make a really big conceptual leap. Traditionally, those strict recipe-style models work on what's called a closed-world assumption. Basically, if it's not written down in the recipe, you're not allowed to do it. It's forbidden. The researchers completely flip this on its head. They apply an open-world assumption where the new rule is, unless we have explicitly told you not to do something, you, the AI, are free to try it. This diagram from the paper shows exactly how this works in practice. So you have these different rule sets. Some are strict, some are flexible, and they all overlap. If you look at the slide, those purple and teal areas represent all the actions that are forbidden by at least one of the rulebooks. But that clear space right in the middle, that's the allowed behavior zone. That is the safe space where the AI has total freedom to operate because it knows it's not breaking any of the rules. So you might be wondering, how do you get these different playbooks to actually talk to each other? The answer is through shared activities. For example, an action like approve payment might be part of a very strict step-by-step process, but it could also be governed by a flexible rule, like all payments over $10,000 must be audited eventually. The two different rule sets are linked by that one single action, and that's what forces the whole system to coordinate. And this example from the paper really brings that idea home. On the left, you can see two totally separate processes, M1 and M2. On the surface, they look completely independent. But then you introduce that one simple flexible rule in the middle. Every B must be followed by a K. Suddenly, that single rule forces these two rigid processes to coordinate with each other, which completely changes the final outcome. You can see how complex that web on the right becomes, all because of one simple interaction. Okay, this is all a really cool concept, right? But the true breakthrough of this paper, the real game changer, is that they figured out a way to build these hybrid playbooks automatically just by looking at data. I mean, this was the million-dollar question they set out to answer. Is it actually possible for an algorithm to analyze a massive log of everything that's ever happened in a company's operations, and then reverse engineer this complex web of both the strict and the flexible rules that are secretly governing everything? And the answer, amazingly, is yes. For the most part, yes. Their method was able to successfully identify and map 14 out of 16 common business process patterns. That is a huge proof of concept. It shows that this whole approach isn't just theoretical, it's actually feasible. They also came up with this fantastic term, pockets of rigidity. You see, for years, people in this field have talked about adding pockets of flexibility to otherwise rigid systems. This paper suggests we do the complete opposite. You start with a very flexible, open system, and then you identify the most critical parts, the things that absolutely cannot fail, and you lock those down with strict, step-by-step procedural rules. It's such a powerful way to simplify a really complex system. Of course, like any good piece of research, it doesn't solve everything. So for a really balanced view, I think it's crucial that we look at what the authors themselves point out as the current limitations of their work. So, first off, this isn't a fully press a button and you're done kind of thing yet. A human expert still needs to come in and review the playbook that the algorithm discovers. Second, it can start to struggle when you have many processes all interacting at once, which is, pretty common in a huge corporation. And finally, just like in that little example we saw earlier, the way different rules combine can create these hidden dependencies that are really tricky for a person to spot and understand. So the key takeaway here is pretty clear. This isn't a final product that you can go out and buy tomorrow. Instead, you should think of it as foundational research. It's the essential groundwork that's paving the way for the next generation of much smarter, much more reliable, autonomous AI systems. Okay, so let's zoom out. What does all of this actually mean for the real world? Why does building a better sandbox for an AI even matter? Well, the potential applications here are huge. We're talking about AI that can make our supply chains way more adaptable and resilient to disruptions, or financial systems that can flexibly manage thousands of transactions while guaranteeing that every single compliance rule is followed. This could really lead to a new era of management tools, where we humans set the big picture boundaries and the AI finds the absolute best way to operate within them. Ultimately, this all comes down to one word: trust. By creating these intelligent hybrid playbooks, we can start to build AI systems that we can genuinely trust with more responsibility and more autonomy, precisely because we have a clear, verifiable understanding of their limits. Which leaves us with one last pretty important question. As these AI systems get more and more powerful, who should be the one in charge of defining the sandbox? Is it just the engineers who build the tech, or should it be managers, regulators, maybe even the public? It's a really big conversation that I think we all need to start having. If you found this breakdown useful, please make sure you subscribe to Pod 4 Journal Club for more deep dives into the ideas that are shaping our future. Thanks so much for joining me.